episode number 76 with Greg Raymer. Welcome to the Heads Up Poker Podcast. This is Steve Barton, and thank you for tuning in. I have an extra special treat for you today. None other than Greg Raymer, the 2004 WSOP Main Event champ, and also since then he was the 2012 Heartland Poker Tour Player of the Year. He won 4 first-place main events in the HPT series of that year and earned himself Player of the Year. It was he won those 4 first places in a span of about 4 months, so that had to be quite the heater and quite the run. That must have been exciting. But really good interview. It's pretty lengthy, so I'm going to keep the intro short here, and we'll get right into it. But what's new in the Heads Up Poker world of Steve Barton? I've got a captain's test coming up with the fire department. I'm studying for that. I've got the written test here in a couple of days. And I've got, then there's going to be a simulator, which is like a simulated fire that I've got to run through, and then an oral interview, and then another oral interview after that. And all that has to happen before I leave on my vacation on May 29th. So I'm going to do something different this year. I'm going to actually record podcasts while I'm down in Panama. I'm going to do it from my iPhone. I think I figured out a way, and Andrew's kind of helped me with that, how I can record a podcast from my iPhone. So I'm going to do it while I'm on vacation. They're probably just going to be, 15 to 30-minute episodes, if even that. And so I can continue to have a episode come out every week for you. And for me, last year what I did when I went on my vacation, if you've been a long-time listener, is I front-loaded and recorded, I think, 5 episodes. It wasn't really, I don't know. I'm going to try something new this year. And I think it'll be a little bit more fun and more entertaining to listen to. So I'll be down there with my buddy Joe. We're leaving May 29th, and then I'll be back the end of June. And then I'm going to go spend some time with my wife. And then I'm going to head out to the WSOP for late June, early July. So this is going to be it's going to be a fun next couple of months. The next couple of weeks are going to be really busy with, in the next week or so, it's going to be real busy with the captain's exam. But right after that, I get to take off for 6 weeks and not have to go back to the fire department. So that will be well worth it and fun. Let's see what else is new. Oh, the website, HeadsUpPoker.Poker. If you've been there recently, you've probably noticed a few little changes. Go ahead and check it out. Jacob Triba, if you're a long-time listener, has been helping me. Well, I'm kind of giving him some direction, and he's doing all the work. He's redesigning the website. It's got a new look to it, and it's pretty cool. I'm really happy with it. If you want to support the podcast, you can click on the little Support the Podcast tab. And if you're going to buy anything on Amazon or eBay, appreciate it if you could click on the affiliate links. And, of course, if you're going to join TPE, if you could click on that link. And Elliott Rowe, if you want to, for this WSOP or your online grind or whatever your game is, cash, tournaments, online, live, if you want an MP3 to listen to before you play, you can get a free one by going to HeadsUpPoker.Poker and click on the Support the Podcast, and you can get your free one there, or you can get some MP3s that are styled specifically for your game. If you want to play online cash, he has MP3s for that. If you want to play live tournaments, he has ones for that. If you just want to focus on final tables or sit and goes or whatever your game is, he's got an MP3 for it. So you can check it out there. And also, when you go to its website, PokerMindCoach.com, don't forget to enter in the code HUPOKER, and you'll get yourself 10% off of whatever MP3 you choose. So, without further ado, here is Greg Raymer. I got supersonic speed that I used to run to you. I stretched my arms for miles. Greg Raymer, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. How's your day going?
Just fine. No, nothing interesting happened today.
Nothing so far?
Nope. Got to do a few things today, stuff around the house, and that's about it.
Good. What I was looking over your website, and I didn't know how much you'd moved around. You've lived all over North Dakota, Michigan, Florida, Missouri, Illinois. You were even down in San Diego, California, Connecticut, Minnesota, and now you're in Raleigh, North Carolina.
That is correct.
What I've lived in the same town on the same street basically my whole life, so that's kind of hard for me to to imagine. What bounced you around the U.S. so much?
Well, I just moved a couple times as a kid because my dad got different jobs. I was born in North Dakota. He was still in the Air Force. A few months later, he was out of the Air Force, and we went back to Michigan, where he was from. And we moved a couple of times while I was still living at home, just because he got a job in Florida, then got a job in St. Louis. And then, I went to college in one place, and grad school and law school in another, worked as a lawyer in a couple different places. And then after I'd won the main event, I came home one day from one of the trips, and my wife said, you travel all the time. We can live anywhere near an airport, and I want better weather. And in 2005, looking to move someplace where there were, bigger poker games on a regular basis, and had better weather, their only real options would have been Vegas and LA. And we just didn't feel like raising our daughter in those places and living in those places. My wife certainly didn't want to live in either of those locations. So we just decided that poker wouldn't really dictate the choice. And we ended up picking Raleigh, North Carolina, just as a place we thought we'd like living. And it's a great place to live, and we're glad our daughter grew up here. But now she is off in college, intends to work on Broadway, wants to be a costume designer and a stage manager. And so now I'm actually probably going to move again. I'm not sure where yet. Okay. I'm talking to poker rooms and casinos around the country about relocating, living near them, and being their full-time ambassador.
That's cool. That's something I hadn't really thought, but I guess that's one of the perks that comes with winning the main event, is you can kind of you get sponsorship deals like you did with Poker Stars, and I never even thought of a poker room.
Well, there's lots of things I could do to help the business, hosting games and stuff like that. I definitely would like to do a regular show from that poker room, like a Twitch live stream type thing where we would have cash games and tournament final tables and stuff streaming live from that poker room several days per week. And I could commentate those and get friends to come guest commentate and stuff like that. So with all those things, we'd be able to hopefully bring in a lot of the business from, whatever poker rooms they compete with.
Yeah. That's a, that's a whole new avenue of poker that's opening up now with Twitch.
Yeah, it's a great product. It's, anyone can do it. You could start, doing Twitch live streams yourself, and you could just, talk. You could, most of the people that are on Twitch, it's really more of a video gaming site.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of the traffic on that site is people who are playing some sort of video game on their computer, and then they're talking into a microphone. So just like you and I here on Skype, we're talking to our microphones, conversing with one another. That person is talking into their microphone, and they're frequently discussing their strategy. It's like, why am I shooting this thing first and that one second? And, all the other stuff. I'm not a big video gamer, so I really couldn't comment on the strategy. But, it's essentially like the poker training videos.
Yeah.
But now poker is becoming a bigger thing on Twitch, led by Jason Somerville, who is definitely the number one poker streamer on Twitch right now.
Yeah.
And he does a great job, and a lot of his streams are him playing online poker. So You see him, you see the table he's playing, and he is sitting there commentating, and he's talking about, like, why am I folding? Why am I raising? What kind of hands do I put that guy on given how he's played it? So he talks you through his strategy. So it's a great lesson and, entertaining and all that. And that's the kind of thing I'd like to do, but I don't really have access to online poker here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so you really, I could just sit there on Twitch and talk and discuss strategy, but that would not be so interesting.
Well, you guys can play on Bovada or America's Card Room, can't you? Or?
I could, but I don't play on any of those sites.
Okay.
Certainly, if nothing else, I mean, I generally prefer the games other than No Limit Hold'em when I play cash.
Okay.
And those sites don't really have those games other than maybe at the penny levels.
That's true.
I'm certainly not going to play even 10-20 limit for stud or Omaha typically on those sites, I don't think.
Okay.
Let alone anything much bigger than that. So, if I was overseas or something, I could, use the various different, big sites that work overseas. And now you could play bigger games, which I would like to do, and tournaments, that are bigger. And, then I'd have something to talk about, and I would probably be on Twitch already.
Yeah.
But given living here, I'm really not interested in getting on those smaller sites that still do business across the U.S. and don't have any live poker. I can, it's not like I'm going to have a home game and stream Twitch, with my home game or something.
Yeah.
That's just begging the police to come arrest you here in this state.
Exactly.
I mean, in North Carolina, it's not legal even if there's no rake or anything. So if I invited you and some buddies to play at my house with no rake,
oh, really? That's even illegal.
It would still be illegal. I'm pretty sure they would technically break on the law in North Carolina. You guys would have to come play for points and not for money or prizes of any sort.
Huh, okay.
And maybe I could get a bunch of people, but when people aren't playing and they can't win or lose anything, they don't really play
cares.
Sensibly. It's like, I got a flush draw. You priced me out of it, but why? Who cares? It doesn't cost me anything to go for it. So play money games never play realistically. And, even if you guys all promise to really play your A game, a lot of you might not.
Yeah.
And so if I was commentating it, it'd be like, well, I don't know if Steve made that call because he's ignorant or because he just, he knows better but figures out what the heck.
Yeah, he just doesn't care. There's nothing on the line. I was talking to a sports bettor a couple of weeks ago, and I said the same kind of thing. I'm like, unless it's my favorite team playing, like I got to be in fantasy football or have some kind of, even if it's $10 on the game for me to show any kind of interest in two teams I just don't care about. Same thing with poker. Some of the guys at work, they play one of those free apps on their phone for Texas Hold'em, and they're so surprised that I'm not playing. And I'm like, I have nothing to win or nothing to lose. There's no reason to play. There's nothing on the line.
Well, my dad would play on online back in the day, but he never wanted to risk money. And then he'd be trying to tell me his, like play money bad beat stories. And I'd just be like, Dad, forget it. Of course the guy called. He doesn't care.
That's funny. I was looking up your Hendon mob, and I didn't know this, but you were in 2012. You were the Heartland Poker Tour Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And looking through your results that year, I can see why. There's a 3.5 or 4 month stretch where they had 4 main events, and you won all 4 of them. You shipped each one, got first place. That's a pretty impressive snapshot of your resume right there, man. That's impressive.
Well, it wasn't 4 in a row. They had other events that I didn't attend, stuff like that. It was 4 out of 5 or 4 out of 6 that I attended that year.
Wow.
Something like that. But, still I was obviously very pleased. And obviously I had to run really well to do that. It wouldn't matter if everyone else thought it was play money and I was a great player, to win 4 events like that against fields of that size is highly unlikely.
Yeah. What can you describe that those 4 months, what it was like? And I mean, what was your mindset going into the 4th one?
Well, I try to have the same mindset all the time, which is just, play this hand as perfectly as possible.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you are coming off of a winning streak, a losing streak, or whatever. One of the things I'll often teach in my seminar, when we're talking about things like tilt and emotional control, is, when you take a beat, look down, count your stack, however many chips it is, whether it's average, above, below average, whatever. Say to yourself, how would I feel right now if I had just won the last pot and doubled up to this amount? And there's really no good reason you should feel any different. It's disappointing. It sucks when you take a beat or you get cold decked. Or even if it's all your own fault and you played the hand stupid and you know it. All those things, suck. But technically speaking, the only reason there would ever be a difference is the image you now have at the table.
Yeah.
So if you were trying some really loose, aggressive bluff and got caught and lost a huge pot, obviously that has affected your image. And your image is a lot different than if you had just put the money in good and doubled up to that same total. So that's the only difference that there ever should be in your mind, is the fact that your image is different. And if I lose a big pot, I might pretend to be upset just because now if I happen to get dealt like aces, kings the next hand,
Yeah.
I can overplay it. I can play it really fast, and people might, they might overplay a marginal hand because they think I'm on tilt.
Yeah.
So, you can take advantage of the change in perception, the change in image. But other than that image, there is no difference. Like if you lost that hand or won that hand and then they broke your table and sent you off somewhere else and those players didn't know how you had gotten to that total, well, then it is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It might matter to you, but that's an emotional thing that doesn't make sense at a logical level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just do the best you can, and sometimes, you play good and run good.
I like that. That's a good reframe. Look down at your stack and think to yourself, I just doubled up. I like that.
And I've seen people do things like, you got a guy who's a huge, massive chip leader. He's got 1 million chips, at a tournament when the average is 200,000.
Yep.
And now he loses 300,000 chips and doubles some guy up.
Yep.
Well, he still has 700,000. He still has more than 3 times the average stack. He's still the chip leader in the whole tournament. And now he goes on tilt and, bluffs it all off or tilts it away in the next, 30, 60 minutes.
Yep.
And it's just like, dude, yeah, I mean, whether it was bad luck or bad play, you still were the chip leader. You really shouldn't be that upset.
Yeah.
Some of us took beats and we're sitting there with 50, 60,000 chips.
Yep.
And even then I would say to myself, 60,000 chips. Okay, well, how would I feel if I come in day 2 short stack doubled up from 30 to 60? I'd be like, all right, I'm in this thing. I got a shot. You got 700,000 chips. What are you bitching about?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's so I've seen guys do that even when after losing that pot, they still have a lot of chips.
Yeah.
So it's even more important in that case. How would that guy feel if he was well above average and now he just doubled up to 700? He'd be thrilled. He'd be on top of the world.
Yep.
He'd feel like he's going to win the whole tournament. So
that's a really, really good analogy. I like that. I've been guilty of that a little bit myself, and
all of us have. It's a question of how often and how long does it continue? I mean, over how many years does that continue before you get past it?
Yeah. What are some other mental game tips that you have?
Well, I'm not the real psychological expert, so it's not really my strong suit in a sense in terms of teaching it. Mm-hmm. But for me, I tend to be relatively unemotional about these things. And partly that's just experience. An interesting story, many years ago, I did something called the British Poker Open. And it was a televised event in England that was live TV with, like a 5-minute delay or something. And this tournament was 12 6-man sit-and-goes. So online poker sites were sponsoring it. And they got to determine, who played in the flights that they sponsored. And so, I'm in my flight with 5 other people picked by the site I was working with. And we would play till there was one winner, and you got some money for that. And then the 12 individual winners came back, and they played, again, some 6-handed tables and on one night to get to the final 6, and then again played to a winner. The interesting thing about this, though, is they had done something where they had gotten this heart monitor thing, and they put that on a couple of the players at each table.
Interesting.
So throughout the tournament, just depending upon who the producers would pick, you got this little thing that the commentators could pull up any moment and see what your pulse was.
How cool.
And I was watching the show the night before I played. Gus Hansen was kind of the big star of that table. And he's a very athletic guy, so his resting heart rate's quite low.
Yeah.
So he's sitting there with a pulse of like 50.
Okay.
And then he was like flopped something. I forget if he flopped like top full or quads or something. He flopped a huge hand that was a virtual certainty to win.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're like, oh, let's see where his heartbeat is now. And it hadn't gone up a bit. It was still 50.
Wow.
You know, so just no change. Like flop quads, nothing. Absolutely the same.
Wow.
And there was an amateur player, some kind of like local minor celebrity, you know, like the local TV weatherman level celebrity.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I mean, he's on the show, and they've got the other heart monitor on him. And he's sitting there. I mean, he looks like he's fit and all this, but he's just already so nervous to begin with. I mean, he's not even in a hand, and his pulse is like 80. And then, you know, anytime he entered a pot, even if he like called a raise with just some marginal hand, you know, now his pulse is like 100. And, you know, he like hit a flop one time and his pulse was up there. He was like 160, 180. I mean, it was like they were
like he's going for a run.
I mean, the commentators were only half joking that like we should have an ambulance standing by. Like this guy might pop because his pulse was getting so high as he's just sitting there because the excitement of a big hand.
Yeah.
And that's what happens is you hit a big hand. There tends to be this release of adrenaline, and it causes certain tells. And that's one of them is it makes your pulse go up and makes your breathing rate go up. And I look for that tell in players. And the next night I got the heart rate. I usually look at their chest to see how much they're breathing.
Okay.
It's easier to see how fast they're breathing than it is to try to measure their pulse, at least visually for me.
Yeah.
But, you know, the next night I was on the show, and even though I'm not that fit, I actually have a relatively low resting heart rate. I'm usually like 58, 60. And so maybe I'm sitting there at 60, and then I like flopped a big hand, and it like 61. Yeah, it went up just barely, hardly, you know, almost noise. You know, it might not even have been signal.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised to see that was the case. You know, I wasn't sure if it would be. But, you know, in thinking about it, it's the been there, done that thing that the more you do something, the less of an emotional response it creates. So it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. If I knock on your door, you know, at noon tomorrow and hand you a check for $1 million, you're probably going to go batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And then when I come up, you know, the next day at noon with another $1 million, you're still going to be like, you know, oh my God, this is unbelievable. But if I start doing it every day, you know,
day 13, it's starting to wear off.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not that you aren't still pleased and all that, but it's like, you know, at some point, you know, I'm going to knock on the door and you're going to look at your watch and you're going to say, yeah, it's 12:05, you know, you're running late.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not going to create an emotional reaction anymore because you basically, you know, it's happening, you know, it's coming, and the same thing for horrible. I mean, you know, if we're torturing the prisoner every day at noon, you know, at some point, can he still be like emotionally reacting when the clock hits noon? You know, it's a horrible thing. He doesn't want to endure it, but it's become less emotional each time because it's just part of the daily routine, so to speak, even though it's an awful thing. So as humans, you know, we're going to adapt. And that's really the only solution to getting past that tell is experience. When you get to the point where, like when you flop quads, you're not thinking like, cha-ching, I'm going to win, blah, blah, blah. You are thinking, okay, I got quads, that's great, but how do I actually win some money here? Like,
how do I get the maximum value out of this hand?
I raised 2.5x and this guy called, you know, and my pocket tens just hit the 10-10-3 flop. But yeah, how do I get paid off?
Yeah.
You know, do I want to bet now? Do I want to slow play? Because I would rather, you know, win 100 blinds with a pair of twos, you know, than win 3 blinds with quads.
Yeah.
So, you know, how do I, you know, and if I bet and you fold, okay, it doesn't mean I made any mistakes, but like, what's really to be that excited about?
Yeah.
You know, I could have, you know, instead of 10-10-3, it could have been ace-ace-3, and maybe it would have played out exactly the same. You know, if you don't have an ace in your hand, you probably still fold to the bet, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the big deal? So you have to get to that point where hitting the big hand isn't emotional to you because that's really not what you're thinking about. Now, if you're all in pre-flop and you flop quads, now, you can get it. It's like, hey, I did win the chips.
Yeah.
And
now's the time to
obviously,
get excited.
yeah, now's the time to get excited. It can't hurt. It's not like the guy can use that tell against you.
Yeah.
But that's really there is no other solution. There's no trick, like, oh, well, think this way. No, you just have to be there often enough that the event in and of itself of flopping big isn't exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I was looking at your site. You do group training and you do one-on-one training. Is that right? At Fossil Man Poker?
Yep. I do large group seminars. I talk to poker rooms to get them to book me. It can be a great deal for the poker room because it doesn't have to cost them anything. I ask them to buy some of the seats, but what they typically are going to do is, like, they've got promotional giveaways, they're doing high hands and things like that. And so, a typical full day seminar is priced at $300, and all they have to do is, instead of giving you $300 in some other form, some other prize or cash, they just give you a $300 seminar seat. So now it's the same promotional dollar that they were already going to give away. They're just giving you a ticket to my seminar, and now I show up, teach the seminar, and and they're promoting their poker room, their casino. So they'll often have me doing
that's a win-win for radio
interviews and stuff like that in advance. Especially the most successful events have really been some of the smaller rooms.
Okay.
I had a great event at this poker club in Eugene, Oregon, High Mountain Poker Palace, like 6 tables or something. And, we got like 40 students all day long on a Saturday doing the seminar. So for them, it's a big deal because, they're this little club in Eugene, Oregon. It's not like, if you go to the Commerce, the Bellagio, the big poker rooms around the country, you kind of expect to see some of the poker players that from TV to be there playing almost any day of the week.
Yeah.
If I go to the Commerce right now, this second, there's a good chance there'll be people I know from televised poker who are in that room this second. But if I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and I walk into a poker room, I don't expect to see anyone I know at all unless I'm from the area, let alone someone I know from seeing them on TV. So it's a bigger deal to them, and that's like someone like the Commerce isn't going to book my seminar because they're like, we don't need the publicity that you're going to be here. Yeah. We got people here all the time.
Yeah. They come in and play for free.
Yeah, we don't have to go to any effort. So they're not the kind of poker room that I'm talking to about booking my seminars.
Now, how do you do the live training like that? I do coaching online over Skype, and we pull up hand histories and stuff. But live training, do you just kind of get a poker table and throw everyone some chips and deal a hand and then talk about it afterwards? Or like, how do you even teach that?
That's part of it. For my full day seminars, it's typically, we're going to spend about 3 hours in the morning doing lecture. So let's say I got 40 students. They're all sitting there, and I'm going through a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm talking about these various things. And because there's a lot of topics I really think that, I want to introduce to them that they, may not know about. And even if they know about it, I want to go through it with them to make sure they understand it accurately. And that kind of sets the bar, so to speak. And now in the afternoon, I will have co-instructors with me, and we'll do exactly that. So if we had 40 students, we're going to spend about 4 hours in the afternoon doing live hand labs. So the students are going to sit there at the 4 poker tables, and myself and my 3 co-instructors will be the dealers. And we're going to deal, and they're going to play as if it were a real game. And whether we're focusing on no-limit tournament or no-limit cash game or limit or whatever, they're going to play as if it's a real game. And at the end of the hand, we're going to critique the decisions.
Okay.
So if you limped in early position, guy in late position raised, big blind calls, you call, flop comes, whatever, check, pre-flop raiser bets, big blind folds, you call. Now you check fold the turn. Now when the hand's over, you're going to show me your cards, and I'm going to say, like, okay, I like or don't like the limp pre-flop. I like or don't like the call, and so on. And I'm going to explain why I like it or don't like it, and if I don't like it, what I think you should have done.
Okay.
And so on.
Yeah.
And I'm often going to ask you, like, why? What was your reason for that?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's a good reason, but here are some really good reasons you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's something that's a typical human failing, is that we will come up with a reason for a decision, and not just poker, but every aspect of life. We'll come up with a reason supporting a decision and then say, okay, so that's the smart thing to do, and we'll do it. And it's like, well, no, there might be lots of other reasons that we should consider first. It's one thing if you're just deciding what entree to order at a restaurant. It's not like you can really screw it up, so to speak. It's like, okay, this might not have been the number one thing on the menu that you were going to enjoy the most. But, if it looked good, then it's not like it's some horrible mistake that you picked it.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd picked the duck à l'orange, but, too late. I've already ordered, the
burger.
The burger, whatever, But it's not like you're going to, have years of regret about the decision. But we tend to do that with every decision in our life, not just, relatively meaningless things like which entree are we going to order at the restaurant, but, are we going to buy or sell a stock? Are we going to buy this house or that house? Things that are going to actually have a pretty big long-term impact on us, maybe. Yeah. And so people will do that. They'll just, like, what's the first reason that comes to mind that's for or against the decision? And then we kind of stop the analysis and go with it. But usually there's lots of reasons, both for and against any decision. And so depending upon the importance of the decision, you need to spend more time considering as many of those options as you can. Yeah. And then the hard part is weighing them. I might come up with 10 reasons to call and one reason to fold. And the one reason to fold might be more significant than all the 10 reasons to call put together.
Yeah.
So, that's really the hardest part is not, you got to combat that first human tendency to just go with the first reason that comes to mind. Yeah. And think about other reasons. But then once you've gotten to that stage, it's like, well, how do I properly weigh each of these factors in making the decision?
Yeah.
And that's complicated and way beyond the scope of any conversation we can have in a simple podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your plans for the WSOP? I assume you're going out.
Yep, I tend to fly out June 1st to be there in time for the Colossus on June 2nd, and then I imagine I'll just be staying until I'm done with the main event.
Okay, you're going to be out there the full month and a half?
Hopefully I don't leave until I make the November 9, and then I will leave Vegas between then and November.
Right on. What do you bring your family, your wife and daughter out with you, or is it just going to be yourself? Or
it's been, they've come in the past, and then not as much the last few years. While my daughter's been in high school, she also had been interning with a local theater company the last several summers. So my wife would have to stay home with her. And now my daughter's off in college, and again, she's going to be interning for a theater company outside Boston this summer. And my wife doesn't terribly love Vegas, so she probably won't really be inclined to visit.
My wife is the same. She does not like poker or gambling.
In the past, when my daughter was younger and didn't have stuff tying her up over the summer, I would rent a house, and they would come out for a week here and a week there, and they would do the other stuff. They would go see shows and shopping and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Certainly not gambling or anything. And, I might have had, family or friends that might come stay. So it's like, well, let's have a house with a few bedrooms and there's room for everybody. Yeah. But the last few years, it's either been like a small condo or like an extended stay residence type hotel. Because I do like having an actual, something that's at least more like an apartment, with like an actual kitchen with a refrigerator, freezer, and a stove and all that.
You can make breakfast in the morning, and yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you get busted early, you can go home and cook. I usually, my brother lives out there. I have some property out there, and usually I'll stay with him. But this time he's moving, so I think I'm going to have to rent a room or something. I don't know. I don't want to do a hotel because then I'm basically eating out all the time. I want something with a kitchen I can bring my blender and make my smoothies and cook and stuff,
Yeah, keep some fresh veggies in the fridge and then come back on the dinner break and make yourself a quick salad and
Yeah,
stuff like that,
Yeah.
Like have some grilled chicken thighs or something that you've cut up to add to the salad for the protein, blah, 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 whatever it is that suits you,
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Like I said, smoothies, vegan, grill a steak, whatever. I mean, but whatever. But now you can just do it on your own terms rather than, like you said, having to go out and eat. Yeah. And I've seen that issue on the dinner breaks. People go out like, okay, if I got a buddy who's going to have the car waiting for me outside, and I'm going to jump in the car and we're going to immediately drive over to this restaurant close by. But now all of a sudden something happens. They place their order and there's a delay, and it's like, well, we don't have time now. So
yeah.
Like, are we getting it to go, or are we just walking out of here and not getting any dinner at all?
Yeah. Or they get a giant pizza, then they're halfway asleep an hour after the dinner break.
Well, it's not an issue for me. I don't ever seem to have that post-meal
sluggishness. Oh, you don't? Oh, man, I sure do.
No, it doesn't seem to work that way for me. Maybe that's a side effect of being heavy. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to. I kind of have it down to a science. I have to eat. You get a break every 2 hours. I eat every fourth hour, and the size of the meal is very important to me because if it's too big, then I start getting that coma. But
well, that's the thing. You should plan for whatever works best for you.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone says that this is what you should eat on your dinner break, or this is what you should, snack on for the 15-minute breaks, it's like, yeah, whatever. Maybe that's good for them. That may not be what works best for you. Get to know yourself and then determine, like, what should I do on these breaks? Should I have my poker bag with me and have certain kinds of snacks? And so I'm not going to tell you to do this or that, but I'm going to tell you to figure out what works for you to, like you said, keep yourself at a high energy level, not sluggish, not sugar rush or sugar coma.
Yeah.
Some people, have certain things they need to do to maintain. And so, yeah, figure that out and do it and arrange, especially for the important tournaments, arrange for help if you can.
Yeah.
Have that buddy who's going to, bring you that necessary snack on that 15-minute break that you don't have time to go get for yourself.
Yeah. I was looking, when I was looking through your Hidden Bob, I saw that you've played quite a few of the deep stacks, the daily deep stacks they got at the Rio.
Oh, I've played those on several occasions. It's good value for your money. People tend to play very poorly. Yeah. So the only downside is that to make any real money, you've got to get it to the very end, which means playing until like 6 a.m. or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Last year or the year before, I can't remember. I got, I think the best I've ever finished was 15th. And there was, I think, 1,500 people. And it went until, I think I busted at 7 in the morning. And so it's a long, brutal tournament. But, I mean, if you get first in that thing, you could get, some of the prizes are 40, 50 grand.
So they've been as high as 70.
Have they really?
Wow. On a few occasions. So and that was one of the things, though. It's like the deepest I went in one of those was we were down to 2 tables. I forget whether I was 12th or 14th or something.
Yeah.
And maybe it paid 3,000 or whatever. And I was just, and it was, again, it's like you said, 6, 7 in the morning. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like,
yeah.
And then I'm like getting it all in pre-flop with like aces against Jack 10 or something like that, to lose. I forget the details of the hand now, but so like instead of being, I go from above average stack to bust instead of above average stack to chip leader.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, oh, well, it's nice to win the 2,000 or 3,000, but
damn, this has been a long 18 hours.
And it's almost like I'd want a faster structure actually rather than slower, or make it a 2-day tournament, one or the other.
See, I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind if they get down to, I don't know, 4 or 5 tables or something, moving it over to a second day and then just pick that up with the, it'd only be 4 or 5 tables. They'd only need a few dealers. It wouldn't be a huge thing. But, yeah, it's a fun tournament. I'm going to play a bunch of those this time. I haven't played any of the ones after that, though. You know how you play they got the 235, and then after that there's the 185, and then at like 10 at night or something, they have the 135, and you get 15K, 10K, and then 5K. Have you played any of the ones after that? Like you bust the 235 and then you jump into one of the others? Or?
I haven't, because then I already know it's like, I can now play really late at night and not even be in the money.
Yeah.
And, frequently I am potentially going to play something the next day. So I haven't really wanted to do that.
Yeah, just not worth your time.
But, and then the fields are much, the buy-in's smaller, the fields are a lot smaller. So, I mean, if the 235, has thousands of players in it or whatever, the 185 might only have 400
Okay.
or something. So, like, the potential as to what you can win, is a lot less.
Yeah.
So it's just, it ends up not necessarily being worth it. It's not that I've never done it, but I'm not that likely to do it. And I can probably do better off in terms of like an hourly rate playing like the single table satellites or something like that.
Yeah. I ran into Andy Block it's last year or the year before, and he was in the 235, and we were talking real quick, and he's all yeah, this one's great because if you bust the 235, then you can jump over to the 185, and if you miss that, then you can get into the 135. I'm like, man, you just love to play, Jesus, that's impressive.
Well, and he does. He loves poker, and so unless something has changed, that's definitely the case. And I'm of the same mindset. I love playing, but I'm also thinking about what's on the schedule tomorrow and all that. I don't want to. I mean, that might have been one of the things that was the most disappointing about that. Getting busted at the second table was that it's so late at night, and it's like, okay, it's nice to have made a little bit of money, but now I may be skipping the noon event that I was going to play the next day.
Yeah. When your ROI is a lot better in that than it was in the.
Like here. Yeah, here's the noon bracelet event, and it's like, I'd been figuring I was going to play that, but now, by the time I get a full night's sleep, if registration's still open, I'll be coming in with 20, 30 blinds.
Yeah.
I'd be much more likely to play the daily deep stacks if I'm not going to play until the afternoon event, the second event the next day.
Yeah. Let's see, what was I? I got a hand. If you want to do a little strategy.
Okay.
This is from it's from an online tournament. It's a $55 buy-in, and we are in the small blind. We have Ace King offsuit. So it folds around to us in the small blind, and we have. Let's see, we got 65 big blinds. The big blind has 55 big blinds. So we have him covered. We've got a little over 10K. He has about 8,500. And the blind levels are 80, 160. So the total pot to start is 375. And
wait, is it 65 blinds or is it 80, 160 and 10,000 chips? Because the math doesn't add up there.
Oh, okay. It's 80, 160 are the blinds.
And, I said, and I'm sorry, that's okay, yeah.
Okay. And
I like slipped a zero there.
No worries. If math is.
I was thinking like you only have 16 blinds, or whatever. I mean, you only have 6, you don't have that, but I slipped the zero, so you're okay.
Okay, all right.
Those numbers do make sense.
All right. 80, 160, we have Ace King off in the small blind, and well, we're always raising here, right? We're never limping here with Ace King when it's blind on blind like this, or?
It depends. There might be opponents who you would limp, 3-bet against. If you got someone who's going to raise every time you limp, or you think almost every time you limp, then you might limp re-raise. But you'd need to also be balancing that by limp re-raising with a lot of other hands as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, basically, if you think this guy's going to raise every time you limp, you might be re-raising with the top 20% of all starting hands, not just, top 3% or whatever that Ace King is in.
Okay.
But it's certainly a viable strategy to limp re-raise.
This guy's a calling station. His numbers are 44-6. So 44% of the time he's seeing a flop, and 6% of the time he's doing a pre-flop raise. So he's...
Oh, well, he's definitely then you raise into him because you don't expect him to raise when you limp.
Yeah, okay. And with the blinds at 8160, what's your sizing looking like here?
My goal with all my bet sizing is to bet the smallest amount that will get the job done. And by that I mean where the opponent will fold whatever hands he might reasonably fold. So, I mean, obviously, like if you shove for 55 blinds, the guy's folding pretty much everything. But that's ridiculous. But if we're talking about like what percentage of his hands would he fold for, let's say, a 3 or 4x raise? So that's kind of our guideline.
Okay.
Well, it's like if in other words, let's say you think that this guy's going to fold half of his hands if you open for 3x. Well, what percentage of hands will he fold if you open for 2.5? If he's still folding almost 50%, then you should be raising to 2.5 instead of 3.
Okay.
But if raising them in, now all of a sudden he doesn't fold 50%, he only folds 20%, then that's not a big enough raise. So it will vary with the situation, and I try not really to let it vary with the opponent too much when I'm doing an open raise from any other position. But when I'm in the small blind, big blind, then you tend to make it a bigger number. So if I've decided that my number at this table at 8160 is to make it 350 from most positions, then I'm probably going to make it 400 to 450 small blind, big blind.
Okay.
Maybe even a full 3x, to 480 or 500. Because now that the guy has position on you, presumably he's a lot more likely to call.
Yeah, okay. As a default, what I do is in the small blind, and this is just a default, is I'll raise to 3x.
And that's fine.
If it's blind, I'm blind. And then what I'll do in early positions is I'll raise something like 2.75 to 3x in like early positions. Middle positions, I'm closer to 2.5. And then like on the cutoff and button, I'm doing like 2.2. And then back in the small blind,
I would tend to reverse that pattern.
Well, okay.
And here's the reason I say that, because if we're only talking about open raises, right?
So you're the first opener. Yeah.
Well, if we look at your range of hands, you presumably are raising a lot more hands in late position.
I'm raising about 50% of buttons, yeah.
And you're raising a lot fewer hands under the gun.
True, yeah.
So basically, you really want people to fold more when you're raising in late position, on average, because you have more weak hands in your range. And you're less concerned about them not folding when you're in early position because your range is weighted towards very strong hands. So if anything, it would be like if you're going to vary it with position, I'd be more of doing the smaller raises in early position and the bigger raises in late position.
Huh.
Because you want action more so with your early position range, and you don't want action more so with the late position range. And so in other words, you're still going to, if you're going to vary with position, you vary with position, not with cards. So you don't raise more when you have a hand that doesn't want action.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So, I mean, if you're going to raise with aces, if you're 2.2 in early position and 3.0 on the button, you're doing that with aces, and you're doing that with suited connectors and anything else you might ever raise with from any position. And you're only varying it with position, not with the actual card you're holding. Because obviously, if you vary it with the card you're holding, you're essentially...
Yeah, then you're just telegraphing your hand, yeah.
Exactly. Now we know what kind of hands you have.
That's probably about as well.
And I think it was either Andy Block or one of the other old RGP guys, like him, or maybe a Bill Chen or someone who had espoused that theory of, like, I will go from the min raise under the gun to the 3x on the button, and then I'll just kind of up it a little bit as we move around the table.
Huh.
And that was the strategy, was that I'm more likely to be okay with action when I'm in early position, and more likely to prefer that I don't get any action in late position.
See, I guess my logic with that was that you've kind of flipped my whole mindset upside down right now, Greg, so this is good. And yeah, I've been teaching students this and everything. Okay, so, okay, my reasoning for raising more in early position was just that I'm already at a disadvantage because I have I've got so many people that act behind me. So I would rather try to fold them out and, you know, have a better chance of having position towards the end of the hand or after the flop than, wow, this really effed me up. Okay, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try it.
Well, I'm just saying that, like when you're raising under the gun, you have things aces, kings, queens, ace, king, not a lot else.
Yeah.
And those hands can handle more action.
Yeah, true.
And there are also hands where you probably would be happy if someone 3-bets.
True.
And if you've made a smaller raise, they might be more likely to 3-bet because now, when you make it 3x under the gun, if they're going to 3-bet you, they realistically need to make it, at least 7.5, if not 8 or 9x total. But if you've opened for the min raise under the gun, now they could 3-bet you to 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Which, they might feel a lot more comfortable doing. And then, of course, with those kinds of hands, you're going to 4-bet pretty much every time.
Yeah.
You might not, depending upon other dynamics. But in the absence, if we don't talk about stack sizes and the exact opponent, then your basic strategy is going to be to 4-bet with pretty much your entire range that you open with under the gun.
Yeah. I do have a couple of suited connectors under the gun that I'll throw in just to kind of throw a wrench in the system every now and then. Not very often, but, I will raise, 8-9 suited or something when I'm feeling froggy, just to kind of, especially if I got a bunch of regulars at the table that know my game pretty well, I'll do that just once or twice a session to kind of throw them off. But you're right. For basically under the gun +1, I'm tight.
Well, and that's perfectly correct to be pretty tight. Most players, even the ones who think they're tight, are not. And it's kind of funny to hear. I mean, I get a lot of the students in my seminars that, say to me like, oh, because it's a tournament seminar, they're like, I think the problem is I play too tight. That's why I can't win, or that's why I don't do good in tournaments. I'm too tight. And I don't have to see them do anything, and I'll say, no, you're not. I promise you're not too tight. You may be too tight in certain situations.
Yeah.
I see plenty of players who get too tight, like once the bets get big.
Yeah. Towards money bubble, stuff like that.
Well, that too, but just things like, they still think they have the best hand, but now they're like, but I'm not 100% sure, and I don't want to go broke. So they make tight folds after the pot has gotten big.
Yeah.
Because they feel like if I don't fold right now, I'm going to have to get all my chips in the middle. And I'm always like, if you think that you're still over 50% to win after all the chips go in, why the hell are you folding? Especially early in a tournament when we're not on the bubble or anything.
Yeah.
I've heard this phrase from many players, it's too early to take a chance like that. And I'm like, it's never too early.
No.
It can be too late. ICM is non-existent at the beginning of a tournament.
Yeah.
So, if you, and that leads me to another subject that I like to do at some of my seminars. I ask everyone, okay, imagine it's the first hand of the main event, and you're in the big blind, and it folds to the guy in the small blind, and he says, I'm all in. And, of course, this gobsmacks you. You're like, what? You're all in?
Shove for 500 big blinds, okay.
And he hears you say, that, and he thinks you're announcing all in. His mistake, clearly you didn't say all in. You were like, what? You're all in? But he just hears all in, so he thinks you've called. He turns his hand over. The dealer's going to call the floor, and the floor is going to, if told the facts correctly, is going to tell the other guy, sorry, dude, you exposed your hand, but he asked if you're all in. He didn't declare himself all in, so he gets to do what he wants. So now it's your decision. You get to call or fold, and his two cards.
Yeah.
So I don't care what your cards are or his cards are. All we care about is how they compare to each other. And like, am I the favorite to win?
Yeah.
And if you're behind, you obviously will just want to fold. If you see that he's 2-1 favorite, calling would be horrible. But assuming that you're the favorite, the question I want the students to answer is, how big of an edge would you require before you would call? In other words, would you call if you were 51-49, or would you have to be like 80-20? Or even better, like would you have to have kings against king 3 offsuit? Where you're like 20-1 favorite.
In my mind, and tell me if this is right or not, I would need like let's say he had ace king, I would need a pair. That's the kind of like 53. My only reasoning behind that is just trying to overcome the rake. Is that right, or am I?
Well, I think we can ignore the rake because it's paid at this point.
Okay.
You have you. I mean, yeah, technically you don't have $10,000 worth of chips, but so whatever it is after the rake, if you have $9,500 worth of chips, you're risking $9,500 to win $9,500.
Oh, I guess well, the main event is $10K to buy in, but what's the house rake? Like 70%, so the actual prize pool is $9,300 or something like that, or 95 or.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly or what it's going to be this year, but let's just pretend that
it's just straight up.
Let's pretend it was 10,000 plus rake. You paid more than 10,000 to enter.
Okay.
Just because it's easier to say that the stack is worth 10,000.
Okay.
Than to say it's worth 9,300 or whatever. But the rake is paid. It's gone. It's a sunk cost. It's gone. So I don't think the rake has anything to do with the decision.
Okay. Okay. 51 is that?
I mean, it depends a little bit upon your relative skill level to the field, but I mean, I'll have students who even admit that they probably would be below average in the tournament and say that they wouldn't call if they were like 60-40 or, 2-1 favorites. They're like, oh, I wouldn't want to risk it all in the main event. And I'm like, well, if you're telling me that's an emotional decision and you admit it's emotional and that it's not logical, I that's fine. And I said, but yeah, mathematically, if you're 53-47, you have to be maybe just about the best player in the field to correctly say no to that opportunity. So most people are way too conservative in that spot. And I've seen some really, really good tournament players who'd be like, oh, I wouldn't call there unless I was like pair versus under pair. If I wasn't that 4-1 favorite, I would fold. They're like, they would fold the 70-30s. Like I would fold kings against ace-7.
Oh, wow.
Type thing. Like that's not enough. Like I think my edge is bigger if I just continue to play against the field. And I think they're way, 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 way off.
God, I'm trying to remember the author of this. It was in Card Player, and this was probably about a decade ago. So it wasn't Roy Cook. It was whatever. It's not important. But basically, he broke it down mathematically. It took him about 3 pages to do it, and he said the same kind of. What's that?
Matt Matros?
Yes, Matt. That's right, yes. Matt Matros. You read the same article, I guess, right?
Yeah, and Matt's a buddy of mine, and I've known him since way before I won the main event. And he did exactly that. And he showed that, like, if you were 3 times better than average, that 6% advantage you should still call. So 53-47. So, yeah, exactly. And you've got the exact source that I would cite. And that's a mistake that good players make. But that's also an example, though, where even otherwise good players are too tight.
Yeah.
Is they will pass up on an opportunity because they don't think they're a big enough favorite. So people can be too tight in certain circumstances, but I've never met a player in my life where I would point to them and say, this person can't win because they're too tight overall. I've never met that player. They're just too tight to win. It isn't the case. They get fooled, though, because there's lots of loose, aggressive players, and they see every tournament, one or more of them, building a big stack, becoming a chip leader, and so on. But they're forgetting about all the other loose, aggressive players that have been busting out along the way. And when you put that whole group together, now that group isn't doing so amazingly well.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be loose, aggressive, and be a winning player, but it requires certain skills and talents that a lot of players don't have. So some of the best players are loose and aggressive, without a doubt. Some of the most successful players.
Yeah.
But there's also lots of bad players that are just kind of blindly loose and aggressive.
Yeah.
And some of them will then run good at the right time and make these players, other players who look at them, think, oh, see, if I could just call raises with ace-5 offsuit and flop 2 pair, beat your ace king, like
Just flop the wheel.
like that's the secret, have it come ace ace five, and then I get doubled up by your ace king. I'm like, well, that was just because if it had come ace ace 10, the ace five would have still put it all in.
Yeah.
It was just dumb luck that he caught his kicker on top of that he cold decked the guy so much.
Yeah.
So your hand, you've raised the 3x with ace king in the small blind.
I raised the 3x with ace king. I raised to 495, and the calling station, lo and behold, he calls.
Yep.
So now in the pot, we've got 1,125. We have the ace of clubs, king of hearts, and the flop comes down queen 9-6 with 2 clubs. So we've got 2 overs, and we've got a backdoor flush draw.
Queen 9-6, you said?
Queen 9-6, yes, and the queen and the 6 are both clubs, and we've got the ace of clubs. For what it's worth, the 9 is a heart, and we have the king of hearts, so I guess we blocked a backdoor or whatever. But anyhow, that's basically it there. What are you thinking here with ace king on this flop? You got a calling station on your left.
It's not obvious which play is better. If he's a calling station who's going to call even when he missed the flop, and if he's always going to check if he missed the flop, then I would tend to check here. Okay. I mean, if he's the kind of calling station that's only going to bet if he now has at least a pair, or at least a big draw, like if he would bet without a pair, he'd have to have like the 7-8, the 10 jack, or the club.
Yeah.
At a minimum, then I could just check fold.
Okay.
Because, his range is either hands, where I have 6 outs, or hands where he has so many outs, it's at least a coin flip if he's not the favorite. So, in that case, check folding is just fine. But there's not a whole lot of players who are that obvious or that consistent. So, and a lot of them who are calling stations pre-flop would fold if they missed the flop.
Yeah.
So, give him a chance to fold his, Jack 7 and stuff like that. And it also depends a lot, since this is a live, this is online. If it was live, it would depend a lot upon like what, reads. I mean, I'm not looking at the flop when the dealer puts it out. I'm looking at him.
Yeah, me too.
And trying to see if he gives off a tell. Online, that's obviously irrelevant. My basic strategy is c-bet 100% of the time when I raise and have one call.
Okay.
I mean, that's my starting point, and I only vary from that when I know enough about a player to decide something else is better. But that's my original basic strategy is if I c-bet and only have one player, or if I raise pre-flop and only have one player, I always c-bet.
You're going to c-bet every time. Yeah, I think I'm pretty close to that as well. But,
I mean, the exceptions I'll have to do with knowledge of the opponent, occasionally stack sizes.
Okay.
I mean, like if you had raised under the gun into the field for 3x and now you get called by one guy and he called you and he only has like a pot size bet or, 1 to 2 pot size bets in his stack.
Yeah.
And you hit the flop, now I might check. Yeah. Because it's like, hey, no matter what cards come on the turn and river, I'm never folding given the stack sizes. So let's give this guy a chance to bluff.
Yeah.
Like if he has me beat, I'm never going to get away from it. If I have him beat, I don't want him to get away from it. So now I might slow play and give him a chance to bluff or whatever. Okay. Or, give him a chance to think that maybe he does have the best hand. Yeah. So that's, again, very situational. But if we don't talk about all the details of who the opponent is or the stack size, against one player, I always c-bet.
Okay. What's your sizing look like into 1125? What sizing do you think you'll make it?
My c-bet is usually like the exact same amount I raised pre-flop, like plus 1 chip.
Huh. Okay.
Like, so, I mean, if I'm in a spot in a tournament where my standard is 2.5.
Yeah.
And 2.5 here would be 400.
Yeah.
Then, like, because if it's a live game, the smallest chip is a quarter, so to speak, then my c-bet's going to be 425.
425. Interesting.
Kind of a thing, It's just always one bet more, one chip more.
When I see bets smaller than my raise amount or the same amount, it just feels wrong. I kind of feel the same way. It just feels, I don't know why, but it feels wrong. Or maybe they perceive it as weak by, if you make it 1,000 pre-flop and then you bet 900 as a C bet, it just doesn't.
I hear you. And I do vary my C bet sizing. I mean, the starting point is like the one extra chip.
Yeah.
But when it's a flop that my opponent either has to have like hit the shit out of or missed completely, so like anytime it comes with an ace.
Yeah.
Whether I have an ace or not, I bet smaller. Because it's kind of like, hey, I was the guy who either raised or, put in the last, re-raise pre-flop. I'm the one who theoretically is more likely to have an ace.
My range is stronger than yours, yeah.
Yeah.
I do the same thing when it's like king 7-3. They either got a piece or they didn't, and I could find out for 400 just as easily as I can find out for 700.
Well, I'm much more likely to do it when there's an ace or like when the board is paired or when it's monotone.
Ah, okay.
Because now it's just so much harder for anyone to have hit.
Okay.
It's kind of like, hey, if you don't have an ace with an ace high flop, then unless you have a straight or a flush draw, there's, really nothing you can be happy about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're probably going to fold whether I C bet for, 2/3 of my pre-flop amount or whatever. If it's like all diamonds, it's like, well, unless you have a higher diamond, you're probably going to fold.
Yeah.
And especially since, again, I'm the guy who raised last. If I have a diamond, it's probably a high diamond.
Yeah.
So, again, it's easier to get you to fold, like, oh, you called me with Jack 10 of clubs. And even though it came Queen 9-6 and you have a straight draw, if it was all diamonds, you're just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah.
I could be drawing dead already, and I could be drawing to 6 outs if I'm not drawing dead. And even if I hit my 6 outs, the other turn or river card that doesn't make my straight might be a diamond that beats me anyways. You'll be a lot more likely to fold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the same thing like Queen 9-9. You might not be folding Jack 10 on that flop, but you certainly might be folding, the King 10. It's like, I got a gut shot, but, if this guy has a 9, I'm already dead.
Yeah.
Or close to it, and so on. So it's just easier to get people to fold so you can bet smaller. But if you're going to do that, you should bet smaller whether you have it or not, of course.
Okay. All right. I lead out for a little bit more. I go 525. 525 into 1125.
Well, that's basically one chip more.
Pretty much, yeah, in the online world. And he calls.
Okay.
So we go to the turn. We've got 2175 in the pot now. We have 93K behind. He's got 7,700 behind. And the turn, if it's not going to be an ace or a king, it's probably one of the best cards in the deck for us. It's the Jack of clubs. So now we've got Queen 9-6 Jack. So we got 3 clubs on the board, and we got the ace of clubs. What's your line here into 2175?
Yeah, you're in a real tricky spot.
That's why I brought it up.
I mean, because if you do your normal bet size here and, you're betting whatever, 1,100, 1,200, he could easily shove and you can't possibly call.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, online without tells, it would be really hard to call, or without a lot of history with the guy, because you don't have enough outs to say, like, well, I have 12 outs. You're not really getting the price for that. So if you were going to intelligently call that shove, it would have to be a combination of, I probably have most or all of those 12 outs when I'm behind, and there is actually still a reasonable chance I have the best hand right now.
Yeah.
He also might have no pair. He might have,
Ace
well, what can he even have?
I'm trying to think of that right now. Yeah, ace like, 10 maybe. There's not too many hands that don't hit something here.
Yeah, I mean, ace 10 with the 10 of clubs, I guess, is one of the few real hands. Because if he has something else, like if he has pocket 8s, pocket 10s, it's like, again, the pocket 10s with the 10 of clubs, that's reasonable. I got a flush draw and a straight draw and a pair of 10s that might be good. Pocket 8s, it's like, well, but, you're not giving too much credit to the 8 of clubs being an out. So it's hard to imagine. I mean, if he goes all in, he's either got you in bad shape or he's making some kind of genius/moron move to do that. So it's probably a spot where you're going to fold every time. So you hate to bet fold a hand with so much value.
Yeah.
Because if he raises, it's hard to see, like, why would he do anything other than all in? Because we know he doesn't have the nuts because we have the ace of clubs.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's going to min raise, trying to, like, milk you. But if you check and he bets, it's still kind of, I mean, if he makes a smaller bet, if he doesn't bet any more than that same 1,100, well, then fine, you can afford to call. But now you've essentially said, I'm going to check fold every river unless I improve.
Yeah.
And a 10 might just be a trap card. You might improve to the nut straight, and he might already have the flush. So it's not like a 10 is a card that you're happy to see. It's a card that's better than random. But it might just end up costing you more chips instead of winning. So it's kind of it's a mixed bag of news if it's a non-club 10.
I almost
same thing with an ace or a king. I mean, if it's not the king of clubs, that might be bad news.
That's true. Then any 10 is a straight.
And an ace might be bad news because that might not be good enough. So a lot of your outs are like, I'm not sure I really want those or not. Only the clubs are solid. Okay, now I'm fist pumping and thrilled to see that river. Yeah. So you don't have a ton of outs where you're really, really excited.
Yeah. Now that I'm looking at this now, I think you got a really good point. Is that another thing too is something that one of my buddies is saying. He said, calling stations like to call. He said whenever they bet or raise, they usually have something, and maybe that's something that we could do here is check and see what he does. And if he checks behind, then we can probably put him on some smaller pair, like you said, like maybe nines, maybe a jack or a weak queen or something like that, or tens, like you mentioned. If he bets, then maybe we can kind of comfortably let it go, because or depending on the sizing, if it's pretty small, then we can call and peel. I'm kind of regretting this. This is why I brought it up. This was kind of a tricky spot for me. But I end up leading out for about half pot. I bet just a little less than 1,100. I bet 1085. And he ends up calling. But
Yeah, you're still in a tough spot. I mean, is he just a calling station? Like, hey, I got a pair of nines. I got a pair, I call.
Yeah.
I mean, which obviously still leaves you behind, but with lots of outs. Or is he got like a worse draw? Does he have ace 10 with the 10 of clubs or something like that you're still ahead of? It's hard to know.
Yeah.
And it's also hard to know, if the river is a blank, how likely is he to fold if I now barrel the river?
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, too, is if you're going to bet the river, you essentially have to, bet most of his chips or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to look strange for you to try to bet another, like, 1,200 on the river.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you have to bet a big chunk. And like I said, just because he's a calling station, I mean, your friend is right. If all I know about someone is a calling station and I see him bet or raise, I tend to assume he has it.
Yeah.
But that's not true of all calling stations. Some of them will take an aggressive line once you show weakness.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's you can't be certain of that. But and if I don't know the player at all, then that is the better assumption, that if they bet or raise, they're much more likely to have it than be bluffing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I bet about 1,100. He calls. The pot is now 43.45. I've got 8K behind. He's got almost 7.
And the river is not a club, right?
The river's not a club, no. It's not. The river is the 8 of hearts. So the final board is Queen, Jack, 9, 8, 6. So any 10 makes a straight.
You lose to any 6, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, pocket pair, or a club hand.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'm beating here right now is Ace 7. Not the best spot to be in.
Well, as a calling station, he doesn't have to have any of that. And I think the real question for you on the river is, if the guy has a flush, he obviously is never folding. If he has a 10, he's never folding. How many other hands might he have that have ace king beat that he'll fold if you now put them all in or something on the river?
Yeah.
And that's really the only question is, if he has a worse hand, it doesn't matter. If you check, he's probably going to check and you'll win anyways.
Yeah.
So it's not like betting. It's not like you're betting and turning the best hand into a bluff, because that really isn't a concern here.
Yeah.
Again, since you've said he's a calling station, if you check the river and he does somehow have ace 7 or whatever, king 7 with the king of clubs, it's pretty hard to imagine he's now going to decide to bluff.
Yeah.
It's possible, but less likely than average. So I'm not worried about the concept of turning the best hand into a bluff here, because there are lots of better hands right now that you can get to fold potentially. All those one pair hands you might get to fold. And even some two pair hands. The guy might have had something like 8-9.
Yeah.
And he's just made two pair, but, he now loses if you have a 10, and he was already losing if you had the flush. So even if he improved to two pair, you might get him to fold. Part of this is a pressure point concept too, and it's again harder to do this online, but for a lot of players that are calling stations, they can call bets that are a certain fraction of their stack, but once it gets to be too big a piece of their stack, now they might tighten up. And these players are less and less common. That used to be one reason why it was so easy to win back before the poker boom, is you would have players that would call almost every time if they thought they had any hope of winning. If it was less than 10, 20% of their stack, they would call every time. But once you bet 30, 40, 50% of their stack, whatever pressure point was unique for them, then they would almost always fold unless they had the nuts or practically the nuts.
Yeah.
So it was just bet 10%, bet 10%, bet 40%, he always folds.
Yeah.
So unless he rivered the nuts or the semi-nuts, then, it's you wouldn't get him to fold here if he had a 10, and obviously if he had the flush, you wouldn't have gotten him to fold, but he'd be folding even 3 of a kind when you bet most of his stack on the river.
Yeah.
Because he's afraid of going broke. So if he wasn't really afraid of going broke anytime soon, he'd call everything. But now that he feared imminent death, then he would play way too tight.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I wave the white flag. I check, and then he ships it. He puts into a pot of 43. He bets 6,600.
Yeah, easy fold.
Yeah. Snap fold.
The interesting question is if you, is he doing that with a 10? I don't like his bet with a 10 because it's really hard for him to get paid off.
Yeah.
He's essentially turning the best hand into a bluff because he's only going to get called when he's tied or beat. So if he only has a 10, I don't like his bet. If he has king 10, but then why didn't he do something on the turn? Maybe he was afraid you had a flush. So that's why he only called the turn with the nut straight. Which isn't that unlikely, actually. But,
I was thinking maybe queen 10 or jack 10.
Those all seem more likely. But, and if he does have just a 10 in his hand and he's my student, I'm going to say, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
If you're going to bet the river, you got to bet smaller so that this guy can pay you off when he has 2 pair, 1 pair.
Yeah, make it 18 or 2,200 or something.
Yeah, he bets something like that, 1,500 to 2,000. You can call him if you have ace, ace, king, king, ace, queen. Maybe
2
even
pair
an ace.
Sets,
certainly 2 pair of sets, yeah. So if he has 10x, and no flush, then I hate his river bet. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Now if he has, 7, 8, and he thinks that even though he paired the river, it's a bad card, he still thinks he has the worst hand, Then I like his shove. He's not, even though he actually rivered the best hand, he's bluffing.
Yeah, yeah.
He thinks he needs to make you fold because he thinks you have ace-ace or king-king or something like that.
Yeah.
So if he's honestly bluffing, it's, could be a very good bet. But if he has the 10, it's a horrible bet. Now, if he has a flush, then I might like his bet if he thinks that you would call it with a 10. Like, okay, but if he just has a 10, whatever, ace 10, queen 10, jack 10, I think you'll call me.
Yeah.
And my flush will get paid off in full. I mean, because he might think that if, I only called the turn when I made my flush because it wasn't a big flush. It was the 8-high flush. And now it wasn't another club on the river. I'm pretty confident I have the best hand, and you've checked. Well, maybe I think you're going to pay me off for the full amount just almost as often as if I bet half of my stack.
Yeah.
So now I'm betting all of it so that if you have a 10, you'll pay me off more. So it could be a good bet, but it could be a horrible bet by him.
Yeah.
But it should be, and that's part of it is having a really good reason for what you're doing. I might have a student in one of my seminars who shoves the river, and when I see his cards, then I'm saying to him, okay, why did you shove the river? And he has queen 10, and he's like, oh, because I thought I had the best hand. Like, that's not a good enough reason. The question isn't, do you think you have the best hand? The question is, which decision on average is going to make you the most money? And, and that's, part of the problem with some of the players is they're too one-dimensional. Like, I think you have the best hand, I fold. Like, dude, you have a bazillion outs.
Yeah.
Like, but he has me beat. Yeah, but you're getting the right price, even if it's all your chips.
Yeah.
Like, if I give him credit for top set, you're still mathematically supposed to call. Kind of a thing, but they just kind of like, I think I have the best hand. You checked me, I think I have the best hand, I'm going to bet. I'm like, well, but what's he going to call you with? Is he ever going to call you with a worse hand? Well, I guess not. Is he going to fold a better hand? I guess not. Like, so you just pissed that money away.
Yeah.
You made no profit with that bet. You folded out all the hands you were going to beat at showdown, and you got called by all the hands that were going to beat you. So they're too one-dimensional. And that may be what this guy's guilty of. We'll never know. But certainly you have to fold.
Yeah. I couldn't.
Like even if God comes down from heaven and tells you the other guy's bluffing, there's still a reasonable chance he's got you beat.
Yeah, the pocket forces a bluff at that point.
Exactly.
I can't even beat that.
Yeah. In his mind, he's bluffing, but it's like, yep. That's where like you call him. Well, God just told me you're bluffing. I call, and he's like, shit, and he turns over pocket fours, and you're like, God, you sneaky bastard, Like, you're not God, are you? You're the devil. You tricked me. Like, hey, I didn't lie, man. He's bluffing. In his mind, he was bluffing, man. I wasn't. I was being honest with you, dude. It's not my fault you didn't know how to use the information.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you. And I got one quick question. If you still got a minute.
Sure. I
was watching the final table, your 2004 final table again. I've probably seen it a dozen times, and there was one hand. This hand was between David Williams and Josh Aryeh.
Let's see, pocket fives and ace king, right?
Oh, okay. You know which one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I figured that would be the one as soon as you said who was playing it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so to recap for anyone who hasn't seen it recently, it was David Williams raised to half a mil with pocket fives. He was in early position. Then Josh Aryeh, 3Xs, it makes it 1.5 mil. And David Williams calls. David Williams had a short stack. David Williams checks in the dark. The flop comes down, ace 5X. So Williams flops a set. And then Aryeh shoves all in. David Williams snap calls. What? I realize that, the hour that we saw on ESPN probably was not the 10 hours of the final table, so we missed a lot of stuff in there. Was the dynamic that Josh was just c-betting everything, and so David thought, well, fives is a pair, it's ahead of him, I'm just going to get it in no matter what the flop is, and he just happened to flop a set? Or what was going on there with that dynamic? Do you know?
It wasn't so much the dynamic, but Josh was definitely the most loose aggressive player at the table.
Okay.
Especially taking stack size into account. I mean, I had a big chip lead the entire final table.
Yeah.
And so technically I am supposed to be more loose, more aggressive. So if you compare how loose aggressive we were to how loose aggressive we maybe theoretically should be for the stack sizes, then Josh was definitely the most loose aggressive player. So I can't swear that I wasn't.
Okay.
The guy playing more hands more aggressively than him, but I was obviously had a lot more spots where I'm just supposed to.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to play marginal hands aggressively because, the chip advantage means I'm going to be able to push people around. So he's a talented loose aggressive player as well. So it's not like he's blindly doing it. He doesn't just indiscriminately decide I'm going to play this hand and raise. So, he's a tough, tricky opponent. But there was no particular dynamic between him and David. So it wasn't like he'd been bullying David. I don't remember that being the case at all. But I do think David's mindset when Josh 3-bet him was that's a lot of different hands. And I'm just going to and given stack sizes, the post-flop bet was going to be I'm all in.
Yeah.
So David was if I bet, it'll be all in. If I check and he bets, he's going to put me all in. Because, the pot was $3 million or whatever you said, and I don't think David had that many chips behind.
Yeah.
So I think he's already put more than a third of his chips in to call the raise.
Yeah, he'd put a third or half of his chips in. I think he only had 3 or 3.5 behind, and he put in 1.5 just before the flop.
Yeah, I don't remember the numbers, but I know that at the time, even then I was thinking dark check? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This, and to be honest, it was a very poorly played hand.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was missing something because I'm imagining, if I had that stack, if I really believed that Josh was doing that so wide, why not just get the pair in pre-flop or? Yeah.
Well, that too. If you think you can ever make him fold pre-flop, then you definitely would be 4-betting all in.
Yeah.
Because it's such a vulnerable hand. I mean, Josh could be totally full of crap with Queen 7, but I have 2 overcards, so it's a flip.
Yeah.
So if you thought he ever could have hands as weak as that and he would fold them pre-flop, you've got to jam pre-flop. But I think David's plan was I'm going to check dark. He's going to put me all in no matter what, and I'm going to call no matter what.
Yeah.
So even if the flop had come horrible, I don't know what David would have done if it came ace, king, queen. Is he going to fold to that? Maybe there was a couple of flops he was going to fold to, where queen, jack, 10, flops where it's just wow. I mean, those just hit almost all the guy's bluffing range.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he could still be bluffing me and full of crap. It comes queen, 9, 10, but he has 9, 7. So he's got, 14 outs twice, and he's a small favorite to beat me anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, if he wasn't going to fold to the 3-bet, then he should have been doing the stop and go play.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's exactly what I was thinking.
So not call and dark check, but call and then shove every flop, except, flop the set, this one I'll check.
Yeah.
But if I don't flop a set, I'm shoving. Because now if it does come, even something that looks bad for him, it comes jack 10, 8. Well, it turns out in hindsight that if he'd shoved that flop, Josh would have folded a hand like ace king, and now David would have avoided getting beat, when one of those 6 outs comes on the turn or river.
Yeah.
So it definitely was a mistake on David's part to check dark call.
Okay.
But, I think the stop and go play would have been much more beneficial. But, since he flopped a set, it didn't matter. Since it came with an ace and a 5, all the chips are going to go in no matter how either of them played it, unless David had just folded to the 3-bet pre-flop. That was the only way he wasn't going to double up in hindsight. But in terms of correct strategy, he should have done stop and go. Especially back then. Stop and go play could work back then. Stop and go doesn't work anywhere near as often now. It's when people see you just call and that's the stack size, they're like, ooh, is he going to stop and go me?
Yeah, exactly. Even amateurs know that move now, yeah.
I mean, I've had players ask me, like, oh, you think you're going to do the stop and go on me? You know? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm still going to try. What the heck? Maybe the flop comes so ugly for you that you're like, God, even if he's stopping going, and now he probably just became the favorite. So I'll still do it even though I know it isn't going to work, because the whole point, I don't do the stop and go unless, like the first criteria for stop and go is my hand is too strong to fold.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be a mistake for me to fold at this point pre-flop. So now I'm going to call and then shove the flop. But if I think folding my hand pre-flop could ever be the better play, well, then it's the better play.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't get you to fold if I shove now, but even now that you've made that comment, it's like, oh, well, it turns out I wasn't going to get him to fold after the flop either. But hey, I'd already decided that this hand was too good. And, like if he had put me all in, I would have called.
Yeah.
So
like tens or something.
Well, even if it was fives in a spot, I might think like, you know what? He's got so many hands he would play, and so many of them are overcards instead of over pairs, that now that I put in $500,000 and my stack is $3.5 million to start the hand, maybe I've decided that calling off the extra $3 million, to win $4 million in change is correct with a pair of fives. So if that's the case, I mean, one reason Josh is making it 1.5 instead of putting David all in is because I think at that point Josh still had other people behind him left to act. Yeah. So he doesn't want to just go from $500,000 to 3.5 or 4 million to put David all in, because like if I'm still in the hand behind him, like heaven help him if I wake up with aces.
Yeah.
And he's just put in 4 million with ace king. Now he's pot stuck to call it off and go broke to me.
Yeah.
So he, is correct to not just put David. Whereas if I'm wrong with my memory or whatever, if Josh had been the big blind, and so now it is just him and David, now instead of making it 1.5, he would put David all in.
No, he couldn't have been, because David checked
David was first act. Yeah,
he must have been
darts.
on the button or cut off. I can't remember which two spots, but I know he was in late position.
Yeah, so he still had to have someone behind him.
Yeah, he had at least the blinds, maybe the button behind him.
I was on his immediate left, I think, at that point. So he's got the chip leader on his left still in the hand with cards. So he doesn't want to just go straight to,
he doesn't want to go bananas and then have you wake up with kings or something, yeah.
I mean, the only thing he might have considered is to make a slightly bigger raise to make it very clear to David that there's no chance that it isn't all going in.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you're either going to fold right now and lose the $500,000, or it's all going to go in the middle.
Yeah.
So maybe he makes it 2 million instead of 1.5 to make it that much more obvious to David that. But clearly, David's mindset was, I got a pair and he's loose and aggressive. I'm just never going to fold.
Yeah.
So I mean, it wasn't so much that he was lucky to win, but he was lucky to hit the flop. It was really funny, though, because he's celebrating, and then the dealer puts the ace on the turn, which now Josh has a bazillion outs again.
Yes.
and you saw David go from joy to like, oh, shit.
He's all, uh-oh, whoops, hang on.
And then back to joy when the river...
1 out of 8 times I lose here, hang on.
And then he was back to joy after the river card. But,
yeah.
It was pretty funny seeing that swing, on his face of like, yay, oh, no, yay.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. No.
Don't pop the bottle just yet. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, Greg. This has been a blast. I'll put links to your website, Fossil Man Poker, fossilmanpokertraining.com. Is there any other plugs you wanted to put in?
Sure, why not? So I work with a couple different people right now. If you are wearing, I don't wear my famous glasses anymore. Mm-hmm. Because those are just dark sunglasses with that novelty hologram sticker on them. And dark sunglasses, I learned, fortunately I didn't pay the price, but I learned the lesson, about misreading the board. Yeah. So, and that is the problem with dark sunglasses, especially if you're not like on a TV table that's really brightly lit, is now you might be misreading the board. I've been at some tables where there's a really strong light coming down, straight down on the board, so it's easy to see the cards. But now the players' faces tend to be in the shadows, and it's harder to read some of the tells with dark sunglasses. So I wear Blue Shark optics,
I do too. I do too.
Those are designed for poker. I mean, the whole point is people can't see your eyes, but your vision is unimpaired. So they don't block out the light coming in. They have a special coating that reflects just enough light to obscure your eyes so that, we can't see your eyes and see which way you're looking. So I represent that company. I also work with ustake.com, which is a site that's just about on its 1-year anniversary now. And that's a site where you can go to get people to stake you or to stake them. So
it's a banking site.
Yeah, people put up a package on the site or whatever, say like, hey, I'm going to go to the World Series and I'm going to play event number 20. I don't know which number is which, but like they're saying, I'm playing event number 20, the 1500 no limit on this date, and I'm selling pieces at a markup of whatever. And then you go to the Ustake site, you can read their package, and then you can buy pieces of them. And the company is still in the process of really finalizing all of its relationships. But the long-term goal is to have a relationship with all the major poker rooms across the country and around the world where they're able to protect the investors. So that, like, one of the issues is, like, let's say you hand me cash to buy a piece of me.
Yeah.
And so now I walk to the Rio and I enter and I win the tournament and I just tell you to, bugger off, like I ain't giving you the money. Or I tell you I entered the tournament, but I didn't actually enter.
Yeah, you just pocket the, okay.
I just send you an email later saying, oh, sorry, I got busted in level 2. And, unless you were there or something, or unless it was on, it's not like, Poker News didn't say anything about it. And like, 3,000 people in the tournament, they didn't, who else did they not tell you busted?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't mean anything. So, it was possible for the player to kind of rip you off. The goal with Ustake is that you would send the money to Ustake. Ustake would send the money to the casino. I would go up to register for the event, and tell them that like, check the computer. I have money from Ustake. So let's say to make the math easy, let's say I was entering the main event and the markup was 1.1 because the math is so easy on that. And I had sold 70% of my action. So that means the Ustake investors have put up $7,700 for 70%. Well, $7,700 would be sitting there in the cage waiting for me. I would show my ID, prove who I am, tell them, yep, Ustake, look it up. And they would say, okay, here's $7,700. You need to give us $2,300 more. I would hand them $2,300, and now I'm in the tournament. Then when the tournament's over and I'm going to cash out because I've made the money, they would only give me 30%. The casino would give me 30% because that's my cut, and they would then wire the 70% to Ustake, who would then send it to you and the other backers. So now you have created a system where you don't have to trust me quite as much.
Yeah.
Because there are certain ways of ripping you off that I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
Now, like last summer, they were brand new, and they didn't have that relationship with the World Series, with the Rio. But what they would do is that when you went to register for an event, you would have to arrange, and the Ustake people had their person there on site physically, and they would go to the window with you, and you would hand the teller $2,300, and they would hand the teller $7,700.
Okay.
And then when you made the money, they would be there at the cash out, and they couldn't force you to give them 70%.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're sitting there watching you get paid, and they've got
they're right there next to you.
And, there's video evidence and paper trail, and, like, here's the video from the other day when he registered, and here's the video of him getting paid and all that. And we have all of his information, so it's going to be real easy to sue you to get that money for your investors.
Yeah.
But in the future, the plan is to fully establish that relationship with all the poker rooms, where you could even start doing this for things like just little nightly tournaments and stuff.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So if I lived somewhere else near a poker room and it's just like, we're doing the little nightly tournament at this local casino poker room, I could go on Ustake a day or two before and post a package and say, who wants to buy a piece of me for the, the 235 nightly Thursday night deep stack tournament kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I could sell pieces that way even. So that's a site, and I'll be putting up actually some stuff fairly soon to sell pieces to about 3 to 6 individual events at the World Series this summer.
Okay, and it's spelled like the letter U and then STAKE.com?
YOU.
Oh, YOU.
Yep, YOUSTAKE.com.
Okay.
And they intend to also expand into other areas. Like, it's actually a real common thing for like professional golfers when they're getting started. Like, here's this guy, he's a good golfer in college, graduates, turning pro. He will try to line up investors because he's got a lot of expenses.
Okay. Yeah.
All the traveling and all that kind of stuff. And if he's starting off on like mini tours, those are actually more like poker tournaments in the sense that, you go to some of these mini tours in various places around the country. The prize money is actually the entry fees paid by the golfers. It's not endorsement money because it's a mini tour and it doesn't get on TV. And so it's not able to generate much of any income from advertising.
Okay.
And so things like there's like the Hooters tour, it's sponsored by Hooters restaurants, but pretty much all the prize money comes from the players.
Okay.
So they pay $500 or something to play in that Hooters tour event, and the guy who wins gets a few $1,000s, but he's essentially getting the $500 that other people paid to enter minus, and there's actually like rate collected essentially. Like, if there were 100 golfers who put up 500 each, it wouldn't be 50,000 in total prize money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, these guys that are trying to go pro will make deals with people who put up money, and now it's like, oh, and you'll get this percentage of any prize money I win, like this year when I'm on the mini tours and stuff, and you'll get some other percentage of prize money I make down the road if I make it to the, the big show and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
now, with your Blue Shark Optics, do you have a promo code?
I should. Like, they gave me the one when I first started working with them, and it was something like Fossil Man 14 or 15, because that was 2014 or 15, and, there should be a newer code, but I don't know what it is.
Okay. All right.
I guess you email the site and tell them you want to use the Greg Raymer promo code, but you don't know what it is.
Okay. Right on. Okay, I'll throw I'll throw your website in there and Blue Shark Optics. And
another good one is Share My Pair.
I haven't used that site.
That's a great site. Essentially, it's for making hand histories of live games.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, there's replayers out there. There's lots of websites you can go to where you can like download your hand history from any of these online sites, and you just cut, copy, paste it, into the window or whatever, the right, the data entry position on that website, and it creates a little video. So it looks like, if someone walked up behind you while you were watching a hand getting replayed, it might look to them like you're actually playing online poker.
Yeah, yeah.
And Share My Pair is the same idea, but now you are entering the information manually because you're doing it for live hands.
Yeah.
So I will maybe be playing a hand that was of importance or of interest, or seeing a hand at my table that was interesting, and now I can input the data, so I'm saying that there were 8 players, 9 players, whatever, it was a tournament or a cash game. These were the blinds. This was the ante. Here were the stack sizes. I can give people names. So whether it's I know your name, and so I'm saying, oh, it was Phil Helmuth here in seat 2, or whether I'm just saying, loose aggressive kid,
okay,
or tight old man, or whatever name I want to give them. And then I input the cards that are going to be on the board and the betting action, and the Share My Pair produces the graphic.
Okay.
And then I can also have that, I have that link to my Twitter. So as soon as I create the hand, it will also put out a tweet and saying, ta-da, here's this hand, check it out.
The hand, and you can go to the website and it'll play it, right? Oh, that's cool.
Well, you play it in the app on your phone, or you can go to the website to look at it. But like when you're sitting there on your phone with, let's say you're looking at Twitter on your phone, you follow me, we're both in the main event this July, you see that tweet with that link to the Share My Pair hand, you're going to click that, it's going to open up the Share My Pair app that's on your phone, and then it's going to play the video for you. And it's also a good teaching tool, though, because, when the guys who created this company started, they thought their market was going to be people like telling bad beat stories to friends.
Yeah.
But it turns out that, because there's also, you have a chat thread for each hand. So when I post it, and then here's the comments that I typed when I posted the hand, but then you can...
Oh, it's like a running forum or like a running blog.
So
okay.
You can now, so like when I post hands, people will be like, oh, you should have folded, or why didn't you call, or whatever.
Yeah.
They'll either ask me why I did something, or they'll tell me why I was wrong.
Okay, yeah.
And then I might respond and say, well, this is why I thought I was correct to call that all in, because of this history or whatever.
Yeah, we got the same kind of thing at the training site I'm a part of, Tournament Poker Edge. The guys will post a video, there's probably one every day, and then you can leave as many comments as you want right underneath it, and the author of the video will respond to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's how Share My Pair can work as well. You can have friends on the site, and so now someone could go to their feed and they'll see hands you've posted because you're one of their friends on the site.
Yeah.
And then they could put their comments in. Or you can just go to what we call SMP World, and that's just every hand posted by anybody.
Yeah.
So you can look at just hands from the Card Sharks, which is like the pros that are representing the site, people like me and Jonathan Little, Phil Helmuth, and so on. And you'll see the hands we're posting. You could do that SMP World, see everyone's hands. You could search for individuals. You could just have your friends list of other SMP users that you're friends with and see their hands. But it's a nice way to share hands, but then it can, like you said, it can become a tool. So if you have a group of friends, you could all decide, okay, we're going to friend each other on SMP, and when someone has a hand that they're unsure of or whatever, want some feedback, they input the data, put it up on SMP, and then we chime in and tell him we think
thumbs up or thumbs down or
like
what the F were you thinking?
Like, oh yeah, it sucks that he had that hand, but you had to call there.
Yeah.
You were way ahead of his range, in my opinion. So good call, bad result. Or they might say, are you crazy? He never is shoving that river without the flush.
Yeah.
The hand you and I went over in great detail. If I was the villain and I shoved the river, I have a flush or I have a airball bluff.
Yeah.
I'm never going to have a 10.
Yeah.
Because even though I tend to get called a lot more often than the average person, I still don't expect to get called by a worse hand there if I shoved with a 10.
Yeah, I agree.
If it was live, there might be some spots where I would shove with a 10 because I think this guy has a set and he's going to call me.
Yeah.
But, and that's actually some of the stuff I get on the Share My Pair feedback. People are like, how could you, get it all in? And I'm like, dudes, I value bet there because I expect to get called by these hands. And they're like, why would someone with that call? I'm like, because they call me.
Yeah.
They wouldn't call you. If you shoved with those, they wouldn't call with those hands. They will call me because everyone always seems to think I'm bluffing. If I fold every hand for 2 hours and then raise under the gun, half the table thinks I'm bluffing and trying to steal. So it just seems to be that's part of the territory, I guess, when you win the main event.
Yeah. High quality problem is what that's called, Greg. High quality problem.
Well, no, if I don't get cards, I have no shot anymore.
Huh, okay.
I have to get more than, for me to win a tournament, I do have to hit, more of my fair share of starting hands or hit more boards. I cannot steal my way to victory anymore because I tend to get called down much lighter than most people would.
Okay.
I had a guy call me with 10 high.
Oh, Jesus.
On day 2 of a tournament last year.
Wow.
On the river, called me with 10 high.
Wow.
Because he was just like, oh, I was so sure you had the 6-7 or whatever for the straight draw. And you missed. And wow. So it's just I get some calls that are just like, wow, even if I'm bluffing, that might be a really bad call.
Like we said, pocket fours could be a bluff and it could be that.
Yeah, so I will, so I will make value bets that I would tell you not to. I'm not telling you not to because you're not smart enough or whatever, but it's because of who I am, I'm going to get called by some hands that would not call you.
Yeah.
You just being any other random person.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were Chris Moneymaker, he and I might agree, like, yeah, you and I should both value bet here.
Yeah.
But Steve shouldn't.
Yeah. 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 You can value bet your river pair there, but
and I do make some really thin value bets, for just that reason. But like I said, when I'm making what's probably too thin of a value bet on the river, I'm pretty sure I've made a pretty good profit with those bets. And again, maybe if we put you in all the same spots, you would be losing money.
Yeah.
In those spots total. And again, not because any difference between you and me in terms of skill level, intelligence, or anything else, but just because,
image.
In other words, if you looked like you or me and you played your game, then you would be all of a sudden become correct to make those value bets because people think you're me.
Yeah.
And if I was in disguised and looked like you, I should not make that river bet anymore.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of the stuff, and like what the heck, and I'm like, dudes, like I admit, overall you're right, but given my circumstances,
this
I think
spot for me is a value.
Yeah, for me this is a correct play. For most of you, you're right. Probably isn't a good play.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Right on. Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I am going to try that with bet sizing, like you said. Starting my next session, I'm going to try 2.2 in early position, and I'm going to do 3x on the button, and just experiment for a month or so and see what happens.
Either that, or just keep it the same everywhere. One problem with the changing bet size is that some days you'll be tending to get more hands that you're going to play in early or late position. And people will start to think that like, oh, I've spotted a tell that he bets larger with like this type of hand. In other words, they will miss the fact that it's a positional difference and they'll think it's a card-based difference.
Yeah.
And now they're going to play back at you differently because of their mistaken perception. But if you haven't kind of figured that out, then now, especially if you figured out that maybe that is what's going on, like, oh, I wonder if it's because like every time I had to show cards from late position, I happened to have suited connectors and stuff.
Yeah.
And every time I raised in late position with my really good hands, I never had to show it down.
Yeah.
So is this guy 3-betting me because he thinks that 3x means weak? Huh. When I make it 3x to open, he thinks that means I have a weak hand. Is that why he's 3-betting?
Yeah, the pattern that he just happened to see.
So now it can confuse your read of his range because you're not sure if he's thinking about that or not. So in some
what's the solution? Just do 2.5 all the way around?
Yeah, just do 2.5 all the way.
Okay.
Or something, or whether you pick 2.2, 2.5, 3.0, whatever. But if you're just doing the same amount every time, every position, now you're more confident that it's not, their play has nothing to do with a mistaken read.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the pros now are just doing the min raise, and I don't really like that. It doesn't seem like enough.
Actually, it's gone away. It was min raise, and now it's going back up.
Yeah.
So I actually see a lot of the good players now coming closer to 3x and sometimes more.
Yeah, I have seen 4 and 5x. That's always kind of thrown me for a loop, and I have to take a step back and go, okay, what did I do back in 2004? When this was commonplace.
I don't see it too much from the players I know are good players, but I have seen some that are doing more than like 3.1, 3.2.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of them are in the 2.5 range now. And I think that, again, is they're just adjusting that. For a while there, it was like, oh, okay, we used to be 3x, and then some of us started going smaller. And it was like, hey, 2.7, they fold really just as often. And then now let's try 2.5, and wow, they still fold pretty much just as often. And it got down to min raising, and they still fold almost as often.
Yeah.
But now we've found that, there's a lot of players that will defend a lot more frequently when you min raise than when you make it 2.5 or 3. So we've had to like raise the size back up to get them to fold as often.
Yeah.
So that's really the thing. If you got a guy who's going to fold just as much for 2x or 3x, then you should be 2xing because you don't need to put in more against him.
Yeah.
But if he folds a lot more often for 2.5 than he does for 2, then you probably want 2.5 to be your standard. And it's never one guy, it's the whole table. But you're trying to pick that number that still seems to get them to fold pretty much as often as they would for a number that was half a blind or a full blind more.
Yeah. You're risking less to get the same result.
If 2.5 and 3.5 will pretty much get the same result, then you should be doing 2.5.
Yeah.
But if 3 gets a lot more folds, then you probably want to go to 3.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. Good discussion. Well,
cool. Thank you.
You have a good rest of the day, Greg. Thank you again for coming on. And you can check out our website at HeadsUpPoker.Poker. And here is your weekly motivational speech.
Give it everything you got. See, put your heart in it. Most people, when they're working on dreams, they don't give it everything they have. And all you can do is enough. Well, see, most people don't do all they can do. Most people go through life holding back.
As long as there's momentum, as long as you're getting up every single day and moving towards your particular ideal, your worthy ideal, you are winning. It is success.
It's up to you. If you want to stay there, you can stay there, and you can murmur and complain and whine, and that's real. But if you want to get up from where you are, there are millions of Eric Thomases who've been where you've been, who've experienced what you've experienced, and we just made a decision that, I don't want this no more. Enough is enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.